The story starts with the main character named Nan sitting in a cafe. He is 21 years old and is the author of the manga, Cultivating 365 Techniques. He was reading reader comments, and suddenly he saw a strange comment from the user Sue Liner. She wrote him that she was his loyal reader and warned him not to come home today, otherwise he would die, because he will probably find him like her. Nan did not understand what it all meant and decided to check the profile of this user, but when he saw that she had a first-level profile, he thought it was just nonsense. He looked at the time, because at 3 p.m. a girl was supposed to come to him, with whom a blind date was to take place. Nan was about to go home, but at that moment a blonde girl entered the cafe. He saw her, thought she was very beautiful, and could it be that she was the one he was waiting for? Nan thought that he shouldn't expect so much, after all such girls are surrounded by rich men. But she came up to him and said hello. She asked him if she could sit down with him. He told her that he was waiting for someone, besides he also has a job that can bring him a lot of money daily. She told him her name was Tang Qingzhou. She asked his name was Nan. And he came on a blind date. Qingzhou showed him their correspondence and said if it's not him, she will leave now. He found it hard to believe that such a pretty girl came to him for a date. He closed his laptop and said it was him. Nan asked her if she wanted a drink. But at that moment she asked him to be frank, and told him that she likes him, and if he wants, they can go and get married right now. Nan did not expect such a conversation from such a beautiful girl. Qingzhou asked him, does he not like her? Nan wondered, because how does such a beautiful girl want him, and there's definitely something wrong here, and it's just not logical. He told her that he was satisfied with everything, but wasn't it too quick for her to make that decision? Qingzhou replied that it was decidedly bad, but she really liked him, and if he was satisfied, so why waste time? Nan looked at her belly with suspicion. She asked him, is there something wrong? He wanted to ask her if she had recently become pregnant and wanted to find a new husband while she couldn't see her belly. She laughed at his logic and asked, did she look like she was pregnant? She said she had never had a boyfriend and he would be her first. Nan told her that after all, they still don't know each other well, so why don't they get to know each other better? Qingzhou said that she has a high position in the company and earns 9,000 a month, and she also has a house and a car, and if they get married they will get married. He can just sit at home and draw comics. Nan wondered, because that sounded too good, is she really planning to marry him? He asked her why she chose him. After all, she's a hottie and must have lots of guys courting her. She took his coffee and said she chose him because he's cute, and isn't that enough? Nan awkwardly asked, because she can't understand a man just by his looks, right? They could try dating for a few months, and then when they begin to understand each other, then they could get married. Qingzhou replied that there was no problem, and she was willing to do whatever she wanted, and offered him to eat and then watch a movie. Nan decided to test her because it was all too suspicious. He suggested she go to the hotel tonight. But suddenly she agreed. Nan couldn't believe it, that she agreed with him even that. He told her that he was hungry and suggested he eat and then watch a movie. Qingzhou got up and approached him. She said she agreed to whatever he wanted and she even took her passport. She whispered to him that she didn't want to go home tonight and suggested he do the same. He apologized to her and said he was not the type to rush things. Qingzhou told him that he is no ordinary man and she is fascinated by his beauty. After a while Nan asked her. She told him that she took her passport, but he thought they would go to his house, but Qingzhou said the hotel is more romantic. Nan asked what would happen if he insisted that they go to his house. But she asked him to let them go to a hotel, because she would pay for everything and offered to let him choose any hotel he wanted. Nan wondered to her why she would agree to anything except let him go home. At this point he said to her, could I be dead if I returned home tonight? Qingzhou asked in surprise, did she say that to him? He told her to stop pretending, because if he understood correctly, she was the one who left those comments under his publication. Nan told her to tell him immediately what she was up to. Qingzhou told him that apparently someone had already told him that he would die if he went home. She asked him to believe her, and she could swear to him that she wouldn't hurt him. They went outside and she said if he already knew everything, she was willing to tell him. Starting tomorrow, disaster will hit the world and there will be big changes, and she came from the future. She told him she was his wife. Nan wondered if she came to him from another world, but she said she just reincarnated. After a while they went to a movie theater. There she hugged him tightly. Then they went to a summer cafe and had a delicious dinner, after which she paid for everything. Nan thought, because Qingzhou is a wonderful girl, and besides, she doesn't need his money. They went to a hotel, and Qingzhou chose one large room, but suddenly Nan exclaimed that they needed 2 big rooms. Nan and Qingzhou went to a different room. He wasn't a coward, but Qingzhou's behavior seemed very strange to him. After all, she told him that the disaster would strike at exactly 12 at night and he would become the future king of the world. But he found it hard to believe, because how can someone who draws manga become a king who will save the world from disaster? He had his suspicions that Qingzhou is just crazy, and so he needs to stay away from her, because this is the only way he can protect himself from her. Unexpectedly she wrote a message saying that she took a bath and sent him a heart. And immediately sent a picture of her sitting in a robe with a glass of wine. He looked at this picture and was very embarrassed, because who can resist in front of such a pretty girl? He decided to put his phone away so as not to be distracted. It was already 9 o'clock at night, and he had to face it. After all, if disaster didn't happen at 12 o'clock at night, it would prove that Qingzhou was just crazy, and then he would go to her room and spend the night with her. But at that moment he caught himself thinking, did he really just think that he could spend the night with a crazy girl? 2 hours later he wondered why she wasn't sending him anything else. After all, maybe she's not crazy, and if they start now, will they make it by 12 o'clock at night? Nan decided to text her to see if she was asleep or not. But at that moment Sue Liner texted him. It said that she was already at his house and she was very happy that he didn't come home. She asked him to remember to choose a side, because he should choose a quality way to cultivate, and warned him not to choose demonic, because otherwise he would die, and asked him not to trust anyone. He didn't want to read her messages anymore and decided to block her. The alarm rang at 12 a.m. sharp. He thought, well, where is the promised disaster? He thought it was just a hoax, and luckily he didn't fall for Qingzhou's appearance. But suddenly a system window appeared in front of him with a notice saying welcome to a new era. Nan was shocked, as he had only seen the system notice in manga. The system told him that now people all over the world have only one choice. This world has many advantages, but it also has many dangers. Have a better life or death, you can only rely on yourself. The system offered him a choice of cultivation type, divine or demonic. Nan couldn't believe it, because everything Qingzhou told him was true. He jumped out of bed because he realized that Su Linger and Qingzhou had reincarnated. Nan ran to find Qingzhou, because he didn't know what he should do in the new era. But at the last moment, he remembered that he had to choose the type of cultivation. He thought for a long time and couldn't decide, but at that moment he heard footsteps outside the door and thought it was Qingzhou. But he decided not to rush and do anything rash, because this is a different world now and he can no longer not be careful. He looked through the peephole to check who was at the door. Looked through the peephole, there was no one at the door, but suddenly he saw a scary woman's face with blue eyes. Nan got frightened and jumped away from the door. He thought he saw a ghost. At that moment someone started banging on his door. The blows were so strong that the door started to break. Nan stood in a stupor. He didn't understand if people were still alive. After a few seconds the door collapsed and Nan shouted for help. He knew nothing of the new world. At this moment a demon in female form entered his room. She laughed at him and asked, "So are you there?" Nan was very weak, and thought, is he really just going to die right now? The monster started to attack him, and wanted to kill him, but at the last moment Qingzhou came. She threw her dagger at the monster, and exclaimed that while she was here, she wouldn't let anyone hurt her husband. But at that moment the monster attacked her. She couldn't repel the blow and flew straight to Nan. She told him that this monster was too strong and she needed his help. Qingzhou told him to quickly choose the demonic path and they would kill this monster together. Nan wondered why he had to choose the demonic path. He thought that the divine path is not the strongest. Qingzhou told him to choose the demonic path faster, and asked him to believe her, because she was his future wife and she wouldn't lie to him. Nan remembered Su Ling'er said that if he chooses the demonic path, he might die, but still he decided to listen to Qingzhou. He told her that he understood what she was talking about because he drew comics and the development speed of the demonic path is much faster than the divine one. Qingzhou expected him to have quick logical thinking, after all he is the future king. At this moment the monster started to attack her again, but she dodged all the blows. She asked him to choose the demonic way faster, because she had no strength left to restrain the monster. The demonic way is this world again, they will unite and no one in this world can compare to them. Nan said that it was good that she reminded him of this, because he really would have chosen the divine path. He called her his wife and said he loved her very much. He wanted to grab her, but at that moment she hit him, but at the last moment he was able to dodge her attack. Suddenly he exclaimed as expected she couldn't be trusted, because if she really was his wife she would let him do whatever he wanted. Then he pushed her toward the monster and the monster grabbed her. Nan said goodbye to her and started running away. The monster swung at her, but she moved behind the monster's back and asked Nan not to leave. The monster wanted to bite her, but Qingzhou took out her blade and pierced the monster with it. She wanted to stop Nan, but he had already run away. She vowed to find him. Nan ran to the elevator, but there were too many people. They panicked and tried to get into the elevator. But the elevator and both stairs were blocked. He had no choice but to jump from the window. He climbed over the window and grabbed the drainpipe, at which point the system informed him that the rate of plant evolution had been increased 100 times, and also the mutation rate was increased. Nan wanted to run out through the exit, but there was a big explosion. The system notified him about the activation of space and the activation of the forum system. But at that moment a huge wolf with evil eyes came to meet him. These monsters appeared too suddenly. He was lucky that he only met two in such a time. Nan threw a trash can at the monster and exclaimed that he wasn't afraid of him. But the monster easily kicked back the bucket. Nan started running away, because the danger level of the monster was too high. After a while Qingzhou met this monster and easily dealt with it. She wondered where could Nan run away. Ordinary people first rush home in such a situation, even though they know the danger. She pulled out his address and promised to find him. Nan wondered, because if Qingzhou cannot be trusted, he decided to choose Su Ling'er. He remembered that she had texted him about being at his house, but at that moment a system chat with other users' correspondence appeared in front of him. After reading this, he realized that monsters appeared randomly, which meant that nowhere was safe. He needed to kill monsters to survive in the new world, but first he needed to choose his path. Divine and demonic cultivation shouldn't have any connection to faction, it's just a class system. Different classes, different development paths, it's like choosing between being a fighter or a mage. Nan made up his mind and chose the divine cultivation path. The system informed him that he had successfully chosen the cultivation path, and he received the chi maintenance formula. Nan didn't understand what it meant, and said that it would be good if he got a skill similar to Divine Flight or 18 Palms Conquering Dragons. The system notified him that his talent for tool refinement, healing talent, affinity for martial arts, body structure, mental and physical potential are 100%, meaning that he possesses everything perfectly. Nan was surprised because he has lived a quiet, flawless life, but he can't stand it when someone cheats. But if there's a possibility, he doesn't mind. Suddenly he saw a big red bird flying over the city. Nan wondered, because he had already seen it somewhere. He remembered that he used to draw it for his manga. His name is a red-tailed hawk with 4 paws. He also remembered that he had drawn a harpy, and a kobold hunter. He couldn't believe it, because the New Age creatures are all monsters from his manga. A kobold appeared before him and exclaimed, "How long is he going to run?" Nan thought it was the end. With such wonderful New Age royal skills, his life would be over. But he mustered up the courage and wasn't going to give up so easily, though he has no idea why the monsters from his manga appeared here. But if this monster really is a kobold hunter, given his descriptions to them, whether kobolds or cat girls, their behavior isn't much different because of their origins. In fact, they are both descended from street cats and dogs. This means that there is nothing they fear more than being trapped in a cage. Getting into a confined space should make them claustrophobic. Nan ran into a room and the monster burst in, at which point he threw a cloth over his head. The monster immediately tried to escape the cloth. Everything happened as he thought. The small confined space made the kobold forget about it, with the only thought to get out. In his mind he would rush recklessly away. The monster tried to rip the curtain off him, and Nan decided to seize the moment. He took a rock and hit the kobold on the head with all his might. Nan killed him, but suddenly some creature grabbed his leg. Nan thought it was another monster, but suddenly she called him Daddy and said he had waited a long time for him. Nan was puzzled when he heard he was called Daddy. He told her she seemed mistaken and he wasn't her father. But she told him he was wrong, as her mother had asked her to wait here and whoever came here first would be her daddy. Nan told her, because she was a fox and they didn't look alike, he had no ears or tail, so how could they be related? She started crying and said her mom looks just like her dad. She didn't have a tail and ears either. He asked how her mom could be human, and how could a human have a demon. Nan asked her what her name was. She said her name was Daji. At this point Nan remembered that in his manga there was a demon queen Daji. Daji jumped into his arms and said that Mommy asked him to give Daddy a present when he came. She led him to the next room and there was a closed suitcase. Nan asked her if Mommy told him what was inside. Daji answered no, but she can see the doll there. He asked her in surprise, can she see what is inside? Daji replied that not only does she see that, but she sees many things around that room. Nan asked what else does she see around the room. She replied that there was nothing else. However, if he needed to, she could see everything up to that big house. Nan was surprised, because that house was 100 meters away. He picked up a rock and hit the lock to open the suitcase. Inside he saw a paper doll. Daji took the doll in his hands and Nan asked not to touch it, but at that moment the doll lit up with a green light and it disappeared. She cried as she thought she had broken the present that was meant for Daddy. But Nan saw that the doll was drawn on her hand. Daji was frightened and waved her hand in fear, and in doing so she peeled off and moved to the box. Suddenly the doll peeled off the box and stood on her feet. She asked Nan what happened to her. Remembered that the puppet was from his manga 365 technique and was called the Demon Origami Pu. She thought it was very funny and asked to play with it, but Nan asked her where her mother had gone. Daji answered that Mummy had killed 2 monster dogs and thrown the third one outside, but at that moment she remembered that Mummy had killed 1 monster and let the second one kill her. Nan asked her, before Mummy ran away, if she had said anything, but Daddy said that Mommy told her to wait until Daddy came. He decided to take her with him since she was not a threat. Walking down the street he asked her if she could look at the map and tell him where there were no red dots. Daji warned him that there were 2 dots in the front and no dots on the left. After a while they walked to the house, and thanks to Daji's skill, they managed not to run into any monsters. After the dawn of a new era the city was plunged into chaos and terrible screams could be heard from everywhere. They walked up to the house and two people came out of the doorway. They were surprised when they saw the man. They recognized him, but didn't understand who he was with. They were Nan's neighbors. They asked him where he got the fox girl from. They angrily asked him where they could get a pet demon like this, and then they would become brothers, after which they would help him. Nan asked them how they made the choice. If they are on the demonic path, there is an old man walking outside, they need to do his errand and they will get a pet too. They didn't know the errands existed. They said it was very dangerous here and suggested he go with them. Nan said he needed to go upstairs to get something, and then he would go with them. But they stopped him as they thought he would deceive them and asked him to leave the girl with them. Nan told them if they wanted to be brothers they needed to trust each other. Daji whispered to him that they needed to leave here quickly. They said in that case they would go with him to his house together and they would help him find what he needed. He had no other choice and agreed with them. Nan realized that they had indeed chosen the demonic path of cultivation. Nan thought that Su Linger must still be in his apartment. He wondered how strong she was, since she too had reincarnated like Qingzhou. He opened the door and walked into the apartment. At this point he wanted to close the door abruptly so that his neighbors couldn't come in. But one of them managed to set up a pipe and Nan couldn't close the door. He said it was rude to do that to his brothers. He had to let them into his apartment and said he did it out of habit. One saw many figures on his shelf. He asked Nan, "Is he really that rich?" Nan told him that he was just drawing mangas. He told them they could look around his apartment for now, while he went to his room to get the right thing. In his room he tried to find Su Liner, but she was nowhere to be found, although she had texted him that she would be at his house. On the bed he found a launch on which it said that if he survived and came home, he could now add her as a friend and left his ID. Nan was upset because he thought she would leave him some weapon and then he added her as a friend. He went out to them and said he was ready to go on the mission with them. But they asked him what path of cultivation he chose. After all, if they all chose the demonic path, then they have nothing to hide. Suddenly Daji turned to Daddy and wondered, because on the way he told her that he would be learning the divine path. They were furious at him when they heard that he had chosen the divine path. Nan told them how could they trust his pet, since he had quarreled with his wife and chosen the demonic path. They told him to prove it or they would take his pet away from him. Nan stood in a stupor. He had nowhere to run, and he wondered if he would survive if they jumped off this floor. That moment the system notified him that his friend request was accepted and he received a message. Su Liner texted him. She was happy that he was still alive. Nan texted her that two demonic cultivators now want to kill him and asked urgently to teach him something right now. At that moment Qingzhou burst into his window. She said they hadn't seen each other for just a few hours and he already picked someone up. The two men were shocked and they saw such a beautiful girl. Nan asked her what she was doing here and why she came here. She said she forgot him and came for her husband. A man came up to her and asked her if she could add him as a friend. But at that moment she jumped and kicked him in the face. From that blow he flew several meters away. The friend was horrified and asked him how he was feeling. He told him that the woman was very hot and he really liked her. The friend called him an idiot because he had read the Apocalypse manga and if he had the strength, all the beauties would be his and told him to get up immediately. He agreed with him and said this girl would still be his. Qingzhou laughed at them and asked why not attack the two of them together at once. After all, it would be funnier that way. At this moment Nan received a message from Su Liner. Nan realized that Qingzhou couldn't see the chat room and apparently the private panel was only visible to the owner. Liner sent him a file which contained a sword technique which would make it easy for him to handle demonic path cultivators. He opened the file and saw a technique called 10,000 swords. In order to learn this tension he had to click to learn the technique. And in a few seconds, he got the first form of sword technique, 10,000 SW. At this moment, Fat said Qingzhou that he had good abilities. But she didn't care, she started attacking him and he couldn't defend himself from her attack. His friend stood in a stupor and Fat said that this time he really can't get on his feet. He activated his C rank special ability. But Qingzhou laughed at him and said that C rank is not afraid of her. He jumped and in a few milliseconds was over his head, after which she landed with both feet on his face. She asked Nan, "Isn't she amazing?" Daji told Nan that this woman is not her mother. He said he knew that and asked Daji to stand behind him. Qingzhou heard her name and couldn't believe it, that it was a spiritual fox Daji. Nan told her that he didn't care who she was, and he had already chosen the divine path, which means they can't be together. He activated his skill and a large number of swords appeared in front of him and he started attacking her. She didn't expect him to be so strong, so she couldn't repel his attack. Daji told him he was a great dad, but Nan had no strength left because he used this technique once. Qingzhou was furious at him and her aura glowed bright red. As it turned out, Qingzhou didn't die and Nan grabbed Daji and started to run. He jumped from the window and landed on the roof. Nan understood that he can't defeat those who reincarnated. But after choosing the path, he really became stronger because he jumped from the third floor and not confirmed. Qingzhou shouted to him to stop, because he is a future demon king and she is his wife and everything she says is true. Nan did not believe her, since he already chose the divine path, then how can he become a demon king? Su Liner wrote to him, she asked him if he was still alive. He told her he was still alive and asked her where she was now. She was on her way to Kunlun Mountain and he could find her there. She also sent him a picture of herself and said she was looking forward to myth in 99 days. Nan thought it was indecent for girls to share their pictures with. But he wondered because she said, Mythos will come down, because 3 days ago he was sitting at home drawing another manga chapter. But suddenly the editor called him. Nan wondered why he was calling him, because he still had an hour to turn in his work. Nan picked up the phone and told him that he would send it all to him soon, but the editor told him that he had great news for him. Because his comic was chosen by the publisher, this could lead to it being adapted into an anime, but there is only one request: we need to add some element of mythology to it. But not like the last time, and no need to add big sisters, little sisters, big ancestors and so on, but Nan asked, because if he adds mythology, the manga will turn into a chaotic mess. And he draws cultists, not all kinds of nonsense, and he wants freedom for his work, but the editor said that he'll add an extra fee for that. With each main the price will go up by 15%, and the copyright for the animation will be paid separately. Nan couldn't refuse this offer, because if the manga is adapted into an anime then the author gets huge money for it. After a while Nan thought about how he could add mythology, since his element is cultists, and that doesn't match up with mythology. He thought about changing the setting a bit, not making the main character fall into a crevasse but to send him to a world full of mythical creatures. But Nan gave up on this idea, because the plot of the new work is not yet ready, and to begin with the characters, and how can the characters be made to be transferred to another world? He had a genius idea, because if he can't change the world in the manga, he can just add different things to this world. Nan wanted to add mythological stories to the world. He called this manga, Descended Myth. Nan wondered, could it be that the new era of his world follows the plot of his manga? But the main problem is that the plot of the manga was invented only 3 days ago, and he hasn't even started to draw it. It seemed very strange to him, because if he didn't draw the manga, then the new era of the mythos was drawn by someone else. He wanted to ask Su Liner, because she was his devoted fan. He texted her and asked her how many chapters she had read of his manga. And did it have an ending? Suddenly she told him that his manga never ended because he was already dead by. Hearing this, Nan was shocked and didn't understand how he could have died in his manga. He assumed that if he had returned home then, he would have already died. But he didn't understand how that was the case, because if he was already dead, why did Qingzhou say that he would be the future king? Also, Su Linger's actions are strange, because if he is already a dead man, then what good would he be in the future? He exclaimed that Su Linger shouldn't care about him. Nan wrote her why she wanted to save him. Is it just because she's his fan? She said he was absolutely right. He asked her, didn't she save him because he would be king in the future, but Su Linger just laughed back at him. Suddenly Daji told him that she was very hungry. Nan thought, because with the new era, no matter what happens in the future, they should solve the first food problem first. Nan thought about robbing a supermarket, but he realized that many people have the same thought, and places with many people will have many monsters, also not suitable restaurants and hotels. He remembered that his house has some noodles, but Qingzhou can still be there. Nan thought, if he doesn't know where to go, the best way is to go to the bright light, and the best bright light for him right now is the reborn Su Linger. She tells him that she is now rushing to the Kunlun Mountains, but the mountains are wild, and before she went to the mountains she was at his house. Nan wondered why she didn't wait for him and quickly headed for the mountain. He assumed she wanted to avoid danger, because she knew the city would descend into chaos after the new era, so she left the city before midnight. Nan thought the city was not safe at all and not suitable for survival. Compared to the city's supermarket, the countryside is full of big vegetable farms. Nan asked Daji to wait a little longer and he will surely find them something to eat. He thought, because if this era is really in the future, the downfall myth, then undoubtedly the limit of combat capabilities will be greatly increased. Once the strongest monster comes down to this world, even cultivators will have a hard time normal people. Because people won't just face some dog-headed monster, but a real mythical monster, and the world will turn into a crazy world of myth. Also, the transition period is 99 days, Nan was shocked, because in 99 days the world will become mythical. He didn't understand how he would survive and how the others would survive. Leaving town, Nan found a lost motorcycle and he left town in search of food, and luckily he has a spirit fox that can sense and find objects within 100 meters. First they had to find fruit to fill their stomachs and then a small storehouse that they don't usually look into. The next day they accidentally found a cow in the woods. They had no other option and Nan killed it. Daji was very happy as she ate only fruit for hours. 3 days later food was becoming scarce for everyone, causing people to risk their lives for food and therefore die. Suddenly monsters attacked them from the back. One of the monsters grabbed Nan with his teeth, but as it turned out it was a trap, thanks to that paper doll. And he easily killed them with his 1,000-blade technique. After what happened, more and more people left the city and started a new life. At night Nan opened the system and got to the new era forum. He was met by Professor Chinha, said he would tell them more about the new era column, and then he started broadcasting. Professor Chen said, because they already realized that the products from the old era rot at an incredible rate. They call this phenomenon the rule of linear acceleration of another space, and after many experiments of his own he realized the true objective rule. Simply put, everything people like cars, food, weapons and so on, they are all in a state of accelerated aging. Professor Chen asked, does everyone remember the New Age activation notice, about the change in the rate of evolution of plants by a factor of 100, as well as the frequency of mutations? Food is also rotten, and it must be related to the rate of evolution, so metals and infrastructure, including government weapons, all also increased the amount of oxygen. But the strange thing is that freshly cooked food will no longer accelerate in time, so he has a guess. New era is a renewed old world. All old items will be pushed off the stage of history, and according to the prediction, over time the world will enter the great era of cultivation. Nan thought, because the transition from a technological civilization to a civilization of cultivators sounds interesting, but it doesn't fit with logic. Food and metals may indeed die out over time. But civilization will not, he exclaimed. At first it seems that divine cultivation may allow for the acceleration of human development, but in fact he has 100% perfect talent, but this is only the third stage of the foundation. But if this world, the same as in his manga, the foundation, the third stage, is the very beginning, and then comes the body hardening, the initial element, transformation of chi. But the original people with cat heads or dog monsters, can easily kill the cultivator with a hardened body, but the most important problem is that there are only 3 months before the myths come down to earth. Origami technique is really a strong technique, it can be used as bait, when it develops to a later stage, it can be made into an immortal body. Cultivation should be step by step, but can people become strong enough in 3 months to fight the myth monsters? The New Age mutation seems to be related to his manga, but can't he try to use the author's perception to think? Fact that it wasn't Nan who drew the descended myth, his original idea after knowing the ancient myths, the human civilization and the mythical world will be too different in fighting abilities. Does this mean to include the technological civilization in the cultivation? But what to expect from new technology in the age of cultivation? For example, using the logic of nuclear missiles to shoot huge swords, target and kill humans from afar. Or a second example, using electromagnetic phenomena and adding them to weapons, will you get lightning damage? It doesn't matter, but would it be stronger than, say, a normal lightning spell? Now Nan understood, there are 3 months until the descending myths. During these 3 months there will be a transition period of civilization fusion and cultivation. This is also a critical period that will determine whether human civilization can survive or not. He must do something, because the apocalypse has revealed the darkest side of humanity, values must still be preserved. He asked Deja if she could not think only about herself. Nan told her that she should become like Daddy and asked her to be a good person, but she cried because he ate her meat. At that time the forum published an encyclopedia of New Age monsters including their characteristics and weaknesses, but many users could not believe it and wrote that it was fake, because how could one person ever collect the whole encyclopedia of monsters and characteristics with weaknesses? After all, to write about it, you need to kill a lot of monsters to identify their weaknesses. New era feature, the radius of active users forum is 50 kilometers. Everyone wondered if someone really kills that many monsters, but there were written characteristics of a cat man and a dog-headed man, and the idea of driving a kobold into an enclosed space could really work. But if someone keeps sharing this on the forum, the coverage also becomes much larger in a short period of time. The main forum headquarters asked if they could check where this encyclopedia had been sent from, but they couldn't find it, and it was only known that the first page was called The Shimmering Red Star. Nan thought that an area of 50 kilometers, with an anonymous name guaranteed that no one would find it, and as for security measures he should make some guides on them and distribute. He thought that Su Liner rushing to the Qinlin Mountains must be related to the myths, since she has been reborn and knows that the original point of the downward myths may be in the mountains. Daji asked him in surprise, where are they going for so long? He told her they were going towards the mountains. She warned him that there was a dog-headed monster sitting behind a rock in an ambush, but he told her she had nothing to worry about since it was a lightweight monster. He thought it strange that after the new era, the cat and dog-headed people from his manga were appearing non-stop. Even the manga, Descending Mythos, is not drawn, which mentions Su Lingio. Nan wondered why only transition monsters, but where for example the red snake with a golden eye, the turtle of heavenly life, the magic tree leopard and many others. Suddenly the system informed him that a new era had dawned and there were new enemies he had just listed and many others. At that moment Daji exclaimed joyfully that her mother was coming to them. He had a very bad feeling that the world was about to be destroyed. Unusual monsters, an ancient, hardened body rank beginner, scary, ruthless filled with murderous genes, initial element medium rank, chi transformation highest rank and immortal ascension divine rank. After a while they came to the warehouse which was on the outskirts. Nan knew that even the lowest ranked monster, fighting abilities are very strong, but now he is only at the initial stage and he definitely cannot overpower them. He could only hide now. All the food is rotting at a high rate, even though freezing and storing in a warehouse can slow down the rate of rotting, it's only enough for 3 days. Nan decided to check the form, because there should be news about the monsters appearing. One of the reporters from the front decided to show a close-up image of the monsters. Nan was horrified when he saw them because if he's not mistaken this is the closest city in Tianhe and the monsters are really scary. Monsters lack intelligence, they are driven only by instinct, destroy and kill when they appear, their first target would be a city with many people. Suddenly someone reported that a savior appeared. Nan wondered who it could be. He assumed it was the military, but the military had no more weapons. Could they deal with the monsters? But they were Qi transformation level cultivators. Nan couldn't believe it. He didn't understand how the Qi transformation cultivator appeared. After all, even with his 100% talent for self-improvement, he could only reach the 3rd base level and a person couldn't have better talents, so Nan only had one guess. At this time, on the outskirts of Tianhe City in a mansion overlooking a lake, the very cultivator arrived. He reported that in Tianhe appeared 2 mid-level monsters, but they were destroyed and only monsters of the novice rank remained in the city to clear out, the people of the city, but at this point Qingzhou interrupted her and said that no need to tell her about it, because what is it with demons is not her business, she is not within and she does not care about it all. Qingzhou said that no matter how many demonic altars built, without the king they have no use. She said that does her beloved husband think that by using an anonymous name and sending this guide she won't know that this anonymous person is him and all she has to do is find out the area he posted this guide from and she will know where he is. After all, according to his way, Nan's target now is Kunlun Mountain and those who sent him there must be people from 9 heavens, hypocrites who live only Toto use dirty tricks behind people's backs. Qingzhou was furious at them and called them bloody crooks. Cultivator asked her to be careful as ancient monsters appeared. Qingzhou stood on the big blade and exclaimed that she would definitely find Nan. It turned out that among those birds was a girl who transformed into a bird. She was injured after Qingzhou's attack. She said she would definitely get her revenge. Qingzhou caught up with her and wondered how he wanted to get revenge on her. She started to cry as she thought Qingzhou had gone. Qingzhou killed her, but she managed to write a message before she died saying that Qingzhou appeared in Tianhe City and the young master might be nearby. At this time, Nan kept hiding in the warehouse and a huge monster appeared there. He received a notice from the system that Tianhe City was officially changing its name to Demonic City No. 14, Nan thought, did the demon path cultivators really do it all? The system said that demonic cultivators could not only gain the protection of Demonic City No. 14, but also have chances to develop higher level skills. Nan thought, what he was thinking was right, they didn't just start cultivating for a reason, they knew everything from the beginning, they just did everything until now and it was all planned. But if they knew a long time ago that the new era was coming, then why did they wait until the last minute to find it? Is there some reason? Suddenly a monster burst into his warehouse. Nan recognized this monster. His name is a huge storm monkey. Nan forgot that Dodgy cannot open the map while eating and the storm monkey snuck into them. Storm monkey is the weakest rookie level monster, already has the strength of a hardened body as well as storm speed and extremely high jumping ability. Both arms have tremendous strength and the weak point is on the back of his head with no protection. Nan used the 100,000 sword skill and started running away from the monster. He asked Dodgy to open the map so she could look and tell if there was any red dot. When he opened the map she saw that they were surrounded and she told him about it. He didn't understand how this could happen, because an ordinary warehouse shouldn't attract so much attention. He ran outside and saw how many storm monkeys surrounded him, and at the same time another monkey jumped on him. He is the future king, but he was afraid that he was about to die because he is surrounded by several monster monkeys. Suddenly Dodgy jumped off his arms and exclaimed, "Get lost to those stinking monkeys, because she won't let them hurt her daddy." She activated her origami paper doll skill and said that they are not afraid and told them to try to kill her if they can do it. She asked Nan to leave those monkeys to her, but he asked in surprise if she was sure she could defeat them. She said not to underestimate her, and told him to watch what she can do. Dodgy applied the evil cultivation ability of the origami technique. Storm Monkey asked, "Does she really think she can overpower with this technique?" But suddenly a windstorm started around the monkey. Nan decided to help her and caught the moment to activate the sword technique in the hands of the second-level technician as well as the sword of the outer heaven deity. He hit right at the weak spot and they managed to kill the monster together. But although the sword technique can kill an enemy stronger than him, it consumes too much energy, and with his current cultivation level he can at best use 2 styles. He called Su Linger a fake fan since she only taught him 2 styles, but when he asked her for a 3rd style, she didn't even answer him. Nan realized that he was thinking too much, since each of them is as strong as a cultivator at entry level, and even if he knew their weakness, he couldn't kill all the storm monkeys. He didn't understand what he should do, and could it be that the future king should die here? Suddenly Dodgy told him that his mother came to them to take them away. In the distance stood a girl with an umbrella and covered face. Dodgy said that it was her mother. Nan was surprised, because she had no fox tail and no ears as Dodgy had. Dodgy replied that of course her mother had no tail and ears, for she had already told him that Mama and Papa were the same. She went up to them and said in a calm voice that Nan as the future king should not hide in that little warehouse. Nan answered her that she was certainly right, but he had no fighting abilities and asked her where he should go. She said he was right, because with his current fighting abilities it is really hard for him to do anything, but it doesn't matter as she will help him. Nan wondered how she will help him and how will she do it. He asked, or does she know him or the future of him? She asked him if he thought she could give birth to a fox demon. She left the paper man to him, and she never would have thought Dodgy could use it. She pulled out a pill and told him he just had to eat it. Nan asked what kind of pill it was and why do monkeys go crazy for it. She said it was the pill of 9 changes. He knows about it, doesn't he? 9 changes gold pill is a gold-ranked pill. After consumption through mutations will occur changes, depending on the talent of the person. The effect will have different degrees. The cultivator talent enhancement, after 9 changes, can be cancelled. Abilities will have drastic changes. Nan asked her, who is she? She replied that she was just a normal alchemist. Nan wondered, because how does an alchemist who can get a pill with 9 changes call himself normal? This point Storm Monkeys was furious. She said that as an alchemist she should first master other techniques. She swung her umbrellas and asked Nan if he thought that these storm monkeys were some kind of material. Then with one swing she killed all the monkeys. She said it was just a pity, because it was an initial ferocious beast and blood is very bad, and only claws would do any good. She said that if she was not mistaken then he chose the path of divine cultivation and also headed for the Kunlun Mountains. Nan wondered, because this woman scared him more than Qingzhou. She said that Kunlun is indeed the best place for cultivation, but before going there, he needs to possess certain martial techniques, at least to be able to protect Dodgy. Nan asked her, isn't she here to take Dodgy with her? She replied that she's just an ordinary alchemist and can't teach Dodgy anything, but he's different since he's a future king, and it's not worth hiding anymore since it's a new era, is it? She told Dodgy to keep following Daddy to become stronger. Nan asked her, then where should he go, because the demonic cultivators have taken over the city of Tianhe, and he cannot go there with Dodgy. Besides, other than hiding in the outskirts, he couldn't find any other solution. She said that maybe he should go to Wan Town, and maybe he could get some equipment there. She told him to go there and in case of danger Dodgy would protect him. At that moment she remembered that she never introduced herself. She said her name was Bai Shui and her ID was 0808008 and he could add her as a friend. Shui told him she would wait for him at Kunlun Mountain and asked him not to disappoint her expectations. The distance between Tianhe and Wang Town is 143 kilometers. Even if Nan was on a motorcycle, it would take at least 2 days. Shui did not call him husband like Qingzhou, but why did she let Daji call him daddy? He decided to add her as a friend and she accepted the request quickly enough. Nan asked her what he wanted to know from her. Was she reborn? She laughed and said it was possible, and so. Nan thought about it, because none of them deny it, but they won't admit it directly. At that time Daji wanted to try the monkey meat, but Nan stopped her and told her not to eat rotten meat. He understood that it was dangerous, because there were monsters everywhere, and if Shui hadn't appeared he would have died for sure, but he didn't understand why she told him to go to Wan Town and said that Daji could protect him. Nan found an abandoned house and entered it. He took the golden pill and hoped that it would work the way he thought of in his manga, then he swallowed the pill. Cultivator changes fate. Heaven and earth, spiritual energy flows into the body, as if one person struggles with heaven and earth for good fortune, watching the cultivator grow. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is like water, so if you want to endure more spiritual energy, the personal energy reservoir must be larger and stronger. The effect of the 9 changes golden pill is to change the capabilities of the body, remove impurities and allow a person to become a cultivator. Nan discovered his characteristics and was greatly surprised as he jumped from stage 3 to stage 7, and if this continues, won't he become a cultivator with a hardened body? He can ride the sword for 2 months without a break. But first he needs to get the divine sword. Daji was hungry again. Nan didn't understand how she could eat so much, and he needed to make a quick trip to Van Town for supplies, and he can't let the child suffer. At this time the fat and skinny friend were in Van Town. He asked the fat one if he remembered what he told him, the most important thing about the apocalypse. The fat man replied, praising people. But the thin man hit him on the head with a stick and said indignantly that he could only praise, but during the apocalypse you have to be ruthless. When they were in that guy's house, if he hadn't begged Sister Qingzhou for mercy, wouldn't they have died by now? Moreover, they became stronger because Qingzhou taught them intermediate demonic techniques combined with their demon goat and mantis talents with steel paws. And now they can kill anyone they want. As it turns out, Qingzhou gave them a task and now they have to find Nan. If he can find him, Qingzhou will accept them as disciples of the demon clan. Suddenly someone threw 2 daggers at them from the roof. They shouted loudly, "Who did it?" A red-haired girl with horns jumped off the roof and told them, "Welcome to Wang City." Skinny asked her, "Did she jump off the roof of a building?" She asked them, "What's the big deal?" They fell on their knees in front of her and begged for mercy as they were just passing by and they didn't know it was her territory and said they would leave right away. But she asked not to be afraid of her as they came from afar. They are guests for them and their demon race is very sincere. She asked her sisters to come out and greet their new clients. They said they were so strong, beautiful and very attractive. The fat and the thin one were very shy and didn't know what to say to them. One of them asked the thin one to taste her apple so he could tell her if it tasted great. He tasted it and replied that it was a great apple. It was so sweet and crispy. The fat one asked him, "Is this apple really that good?" The girl told them that if they wanted to eat, they could eat, because they had so much food, and if they were lost, she could be a guide for noble customers. He told his friend that they had so much delicious food, but one of the girls told him that not only did they have delicious food but also a warm bed. The girl told her sisters to quickly escort their customers into town and show them their skills. She told them that here in Wang City, all the people are their honorable customers, and they can do anything. His friend told him that this place should not be called Wang City, but Paradise. After a while Nan walked up to the city and thought, "Is this really Wang City?" A girl in the guise of a bird saw him and immediately flew to the roof of the building and reported that the young Master King has arrived. She laughed maliciously and said that he finally came, because she had waited so long for him. Daji demanded food from Nan, but he wondered, because Shui told him that in Wang's city he could probably get some equipment, but he did not know exactly if it was true. Suddenly daggers were also thrown at him from the roof of a building. Nan wondered if daggers could be his weapons. The same girl came to him and greeted him and said welcome to the city of Van. Nan thought, have demons started to invade the human world? Daji saw a lot of food and wanted to start eating. But the girl told him how can he talk about the invasion, because they are from the demon race and always lived in Wang's city and they belong to the leadership of the demon palace. She told her sisters to feed him immediately. Daji happily started to eat their apples. Nan wondered since they have low cultivation level but they live in the human world and it's totally unexpected. The reborn Qingzhou talked about it. He didn't know how much was said truth and how many lies. The girl told them that they have nothing to worry about, because although they are from the demon race, they are not hostile to humans and in their small town humans are honored guests, and they can do whatever they want. Nan asked them if they have good weapons. The girl told him that he shouldn't worry about the little things. It's their custom that if the customer wants, they will arrange everything, and ask them to follow them into town. Nan started to feel something wrong, since free cheese is only in a mousetrap, and if they don't want to rob them, they will get pulled into the gang. He couldn't understand what these demons were up to, because these demons are very strong, and he is definitely not their equal in this situation. He can only be cautious. Walking through the city he saw people and they were really happy. There were not only men but also women. Nan didn't feel the danger of apocalypse there. This place is like the land of heavenly deities. She took him to the best outfit store in Van City and said she would wait for him until he picked out his weapons and if he had any requests, he could always let her know. Nan entered the store and wondered, because according to the New Age setting, the weapons are past oxidized and rotted, and these weapons are newly made. He asked her, what is the price of the weapons here? She said she was only in charge of receiving guests, and as for prices, he could talk to the owner. She added and said he had nothing to worry about as they were doing business in good faith. Nan couldn't believe that demons were doing business in good faith. When he went inside, he was surprised because the factory was much bigger than he had imagined. Suddenly a demon in the form of a snake came up to him and said that all the weapons here are exclusively made by hand and are a true masterpiece, besides the price is reasonable, and of course he won't be cheated. Nan told him. Asked he could ask about his cultivation level, they might recommend different sorts according to the customer's needs. He said that they really do care about their customers. He said that his cultivation level is in the elemental stage and he can ride a sword. Nan asked if they have any flying swords. He was greatly surprised when he found out his cultivation level. He said they certainly have flying swords and said he would take it now. Nan thought, do they really have such a sword? A few minutes later the salesman brought him the blade and asked what he thought of it. Nan took it in his hands and said it looked good, but hardly good enough. He asked how much was it worth, but the salesman said they didn't want the money. Nan asked suspiciously, then what do they want with it? The salesman said his eyes would be enough. Nan asked, what did he mean? He replied that the eyes of the cultivator of the elementary stage were just enough to afford such a sword. Nan asked what would happen to him if he refused. The seller's aura took the form of a snake and he said that they do fair business, and since he chose this sword, then he should pay for it. At that time the girl stood outside and thought since Nan didn't come out, he must have chosen a good sword and then she left. One guy was very happy, but the demons asked him, how can he be happy if he has no toes? He told them he was fine, because he still had toes and they could have fun one more night. The girl asked the demon to bring her more food, but he asked her how she was going to pay, because she no longer had the life force to pay more. Nan threw him a sword, but the salesman said eyes for a flying sword was a very reasonable price, but Nan answered him that he was not going to become blind with a holy sword, and so he decided not to buy this sword. But he stopped him and said that for their demon race, the moment the customer entered the store, the trade had already begun, and if he did not complete the transaction, he could not leave the store. For such rules have been established by the demon palace. At this point the salesman rang the bell and guards appeared. He said that all demon races follow this rule and there were never any exceptions.